Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the regularly scheduled meeting of the Board of Public Works for today, Monday, April 18th, 2016.
Commissioner Davis, Rodriguez, James, Repenning, and Assent are present. President James, we have a quorum. May we start with Bureau introductions, please, starting with Bureau of Sanitation.
Good morning, Chuck Terhala, Bureau of Sanitation.
Good morning, Nick Lopez, Bureau of Street Services.
Good morning, Julie Souter with the Bureau of Engineering.
Good morning, Chris Smith, Bureau of Contract Administration.
Good morning, Ruben Flamenco, Bureau of Street Lighting.
Good morning, Ted Jordan, Public Works General Counsel.
Fernando Campos, Executive Officer. President James, we did not receive any speaker cards under general public comment. However, we did receive speaker cards on items number 1 and 2 for today's agenda.
Okay, we'll close general public comment. Our first item of business, the approval of the meeting minutes from the meeting of Wednesday, March 30th, 2016. Is there a second to my motion that we approve those meeting minutes by Commissioner Rodriguez? Any objection? Without objection, those meeting minutes will be approved. Agenda item number 1, requested contract acceptance, Bureau of Contract Administration and Bureau of Engineering for Council District 4. The Los Angeles Zoo and Botanical Gardens Rainforest of the Americas project, completed by Metro Builders and Engineers Group Limited, recommending that the board assess Metro Builders a penalty in the amount of $136,000 for the unauthorized subcontractor substitution of one bid-listed OBE subcontractor and the illegal substitution of the prime's own forces with a bid-listed OBE subcontractor. We'll start with Ms. McGlinchey, and then we have a representative from the zoo and a speaker card representing Metro opposed to the assessment of the penalty. And Ms. McGlinchey, as you lay it out for us, you might just separate the totals. I think there are 2 items that get us to the 136. Go ahead.
Good morning, Commissioners. Linda McGlinchey, Bureau of Contract Administration. As stated, we have 2 different subcontractor issues here. The first one is Belco, which was bid listed to perform demolition and grading work for a lump sum of $160,000. Upon completion of the project, we were able to verify through canceled checks submitted by the prime that they had been paid $143,700 worth of work. So there was a difference there. Therefore, we're recommending a penalty of $16,000, which is 10% of the bid-listed subcontract amount. Staff had informed the contractor of this. They stated that the reason for the difference is that as opposed to Belco mobilizing their own equipment, it was cheaper for them to simply use equipment that the contractor had on location, and that was supposed to be the difference.
The difference, though, sounds like it was about $16,000 anyway. So the reason for the assessment of, or the recommendation of the $16,000 penalty, though, had to deal with 10% of the
bid-listed subcontract amount. Yeah,
so it's coincidence that there's about $16,300 between the 2.
Correct.
Okay, go ahead.
Correct. So the contractor stated that that they basically back-charged Belco for the utilization of that equipment, and that was the difference. There was no way to confirm that. It appears that Belco may have gone out of business. The second issue is with regards to the life support system. After contract award, the Bureau of Contract Administration received a call from a company named Biscayne. They stated that they had submitted a sub-bid for the life support system and that they had been rejected. And they were complaining because they were informed by their supplier that a plumbing company was pricing the cost of the life support system. Staff investigated, and we found that, in fact, during the bid analysis, there was a bid submitted by Biscayne. We had asked the prime about that because they had rejected Biscayne but did not explain the reason why. Metro, in turn, submitted a letter to us, which is a transmittal, stating that they were going to self-perform the life support work for $1.2 million.
That letter came, though, after you looked into it. It didn't come during the process.
That letter came prior to award.
Okay.
So that was part of our bid analysis in terms of determining whether or not they had negotiated in good faith. So based on their statement that they were self-performing for far less than the Biscayne bid, we determined that they had in fact negotiated in good faith and were eligible for award. However, after award, we got this complaint from Biscayne. And in investigating, staff confirmed that, in fact, La Habra Fire, who was bid listed for $517,000, who the Metro builders submitted for approval for $517,000 and was approved for that amount, actually performed the life support work, even though it was nowhere in their sub-bid. Therefore, we're recommending a penalty of $120,000 for the illegal subcontractor substitution or the illegal substitution of the prime for having a subcontractor that was not approved to do that work, in fact, do it, which in this case was also a violation of the public contract code.
So what was the cost for that additional work being done by the La Habra group?
According to the contractor, it was about $1 million.
So it was, instead of 517, it was 1.5 million, basically.
That's what the contractor claimed. However, we have nothing to substantiate that.
So it could have even been less?
Well, the sub-bid that they submitted as part of their good faith effort was for $517,000. Upon completion of this job, we asked La Habra how much they invoiced the prime, and they responded with a total of $762,000.
So the delta's even more, potentially.
Potentially. So, yeah, all we know is the information we've been given from them. In going back and forth with the prime just more recently, La Habra says that they invoiced more, but we have nothing other than that statement once they were notified of the penalty.
If the number were 762 versus the 1 million, then that's that much more money that would be left potentially with the prime, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Anything further, Ms. McGlinchey, that we need to know at this point?
No, sir.
Thank you. I know that we'll have a number of questions for you as well. Any questions from Ms. McGlinchey right now before we move?
Clarification, the delta on the second case of Biscayne is 120,000. Is that, what is it that we're asking or recommending?
It's 10%.
Our recommended penalty is $120,000, which is 10% of the amount that the prime said that they would do the work for.
Yeah, it's just a coincidence on the other item that the difference is the same as the recommendation.
Gotcha.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Ms. McGlinchey. Apparently from the Zoo Department, Daryl Pond.
Good morning, Commissioners. I'm Daryl Pond with the LA Zoo Department. And the project is very complete. It is operating as intended. And it's one of the most popular projects that we have at the zoo at this time. There is I think for the life support systems, there's like 3 or 4 systems that are included into it, including fish, large river otters, and also, yeah, another set of fish. So there's piranhas in this tank, and then there's also, what is it? I I forgot what they were. Freshwater eels? Yes. So it is a little bit of a complicated system, but it is working as intended. Are there any questions?
Commissioner Asento, I don't have any questions for you.
Thank you.
Commissioner Asento?
Thank you. Is your stance that you are against the assessment?
No, I'm just reporting that it is operating as intended and it is working. And
Okay.
Metro was responsive to most of the, or all of the warranty items on the project.
Okay, thank you.
The board report indicates there was a process to get from point A to point B, though, to completion.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Anything further? All right, thank you. From Metro Builders and Engineers, Mr. Huela?
Good morning, Commissioners. I just wanted to...
I'm going to have trouble hearing you if we can't adjust that microphone. There we go.
I wanted to thank you for giving me the time to actually clarify the facts. We are a small contractor. We've done work with the city of Los Angeles over 20 years now, all of them successful projects. We're very, very familiar with the contractor substitution requests and the bid shopping laws and all of those issues. This is what happened on this project. The LSS, the life support system, is just basically another glorified term for plumbing, for ponds and fountains and pools and things that have living. It's just strictly pipes, pumps, and plumbing. There is nothing special, but it becomes a specialty when people just focus on that specialty. On this project, when we were bidding the project, we only got one price on specifically the life support system from Biscayne. It's an out-of-state company in Austin, multinational. All they do this is they go from state to state and do this. Their price was $1.9 million. That's the one price we got. We, early on, had started estimating this work. Our plumber, who we had worked with many times before, started to get prices on this. He was a little bit not familiar with this whole thing, and he was reluctant to do this, but then we started shopping, and we started finding the prices of what it really cost. We estimated it couldn't be more than 1.2 million. If we had listed Biscayne at 1.7 million, or no, that's $700,000 more than really what it should have cost. This was a complete gouging by some big company trying to bully their way in. So we estimated at 1.2. Our subcontractor, was at the same time trying to put his number together. He gave us the price, $517,000 for all the site plumbing, for the building plumbing, and for the fire sprinklers. And then he was still working last minute, as always happens in these projects. And this project is a fairly complicated project. Nothing special, but it's so intricate, it's very hard to make it up. So last minute, he says, I can do it for $1 million. We knew that he could because our own estimate, and we're not specialists in this, was 1.2 million. We thought we listed them as 1.517 last minute. Apparently, this is not what actually happened. So early on, we said, fine, we'll just do the work for 1.2. Later on, when we were talking with the subcontractor again, I said, well, I really want to do this. I said, well, you know, we listed you for the plumbing and so on. He said, well, what about the $1 million? He said, no, the $1 million has a lot of exclusions. And he basically couldn't really put his final number together until afterwards. I mean, this is the kind of, he's a one-man show, a couple of plumbers that work for him. Very good guy, worked with him all the time. We trust him. So he said, oh no, I'm excluding this, this and that. Basically, at the end, his price was 1.23, which is 30,000 more than our price. So we gave it all to him, and we thought we could even improve on the 1.2. So we forwent that profit, whatever potential, and gave it to him. I thought at the time that whatever substitution was done, either because we had already listed them and we just gave them more work, or nobody throughout the project told us at all. And it was from day one, he was doing all the submittals. It was known to the whole group that La Habra is doing the life support system as well. I mean, he was attending the meeting, he was providing the submittals on his letterhead. I was never told until the very end of the project that, hey, you guys, you did not actually formalize the substitution. That you did not formalize the substitution. So basically, so what I have given you here is proof of everything I just told you. We paid La Habra $1,900,000 and some because we paid him $1,505,000 for the life support system and the site work. We paid him $200,000 for the plumbing and $45,000 for the fire sprinklers, plus change orders. So he started off with $1.7 million. Now, when he answered them, they asked him about the plumbing and the fire sprinkler. That's what he told them, $700,000. Later on, when I got the letter about, only a couple of months ago, that they're assessing us $120,000 for that kind of issue, I told him, hey, listen, why don't you clarify with them that you actually got paid? So he did send a letter signed. Yes, we did get paid $1,925,000. Not only that, I have provided you with a check register coming from our accounting software, showing you every check, when it was made, when it was paid. We proposed to provide check register, cancel checks. We have nothing to hide. Basically, we gave them all the money plus, and we did not profit at all from this whole situation. And we were not trying to bend the rules. I know substitution. And if I had been told at any time that, hey, you guys are doing something wrong here, I would have either requested to formalize it or stopped. And we would have done the work ourselves. As a matter of fact, on the Jaguar exhibit, La Habra was too busy to do the work. We ended up doing the plumbing ourselves. We could do the plumbing ourselves. We just hire plumbers, and we have people, superintendents, very experienced superintendents that could have run the job. It's not a problem. We just gave it to him. He's a small guy, and he served us well, and we wanted to give him the work and, do a little bit less ourselves. That's fine. So it's not like we are trying to profit from this at all. And we did not try to take $1.9 million, shop it to 1.2. He would be silly to go say, yeah, you have a price at 1.9, I'm going to give you 1.2. If we wanted to do that, he would say, oh, I'll give you 1.7. I mean, this is not what happened here at all. And this is the truth. This is exactly what happened. I have canceled checks, which I can provide you again to have every check we've written him. You have the contracts as they were written in that time with all the signatures on them showing you what we gave him. Basically, the 1.2 ended up being 1.233 for him.
Okay, so you've spoken on the La Habra issue on the life support system. We have some questions for you, but also there's another part of it that you did not address, which was the BECO issue.
BECO, we tried to get them to substantiate what we told contract administration. They're out. They're either not responsive or not out, because they didn't answer them, they didn't answer us. What happened is, throughout the job, we had a backhoe and a bobcat on the job, just our own. One of them was leased, one of them was our own.
Did you pay BECO $160,000?
We paid them $143,000, whatever we paid them. But then that's because of deals that were made on a daily basis. Looking back at the numbers, we realized there was about 40 to 50 days, move-ins, that they would have had to. Let me explain what BECO did, by the way. BECO did the grading on the job and the demolition. They are a big equipment people. They have dozers, they have big loaders, they have scrapers, excavators, and so on. So on this particular project, there are a lot of nooks and crannies where you cannot access the work with big equipment. We had those equipment because we needed them for our work that we were doing, just to have small pieces of equipment on the job. And every time they needed to go in a certain location where they needed a small machine, they could have gone, either brought a rental from a rental and paid the delivery on back and forth, or they could have used our equipment. And they came, and Sam at that time was running the project for us. They made deals like this all the time.
Was there a cost to BECO to use Metro's equipment?
Well, it was the deduction. Yes. But I figured going back,
What was the cost?
The $16,000. So it's $200 per day for the backhoe and $150 a day for the bobcat, and they use their own operators. So our equipment was there, and we were paying monthly fee on the lease for the backhoe, and we owned the bobcat. So, but in doing so, they saved, I estimate right now, between $7,000 and $9,000 on just delivery. If you bring in a machine every day, back and forth, that's $100 each way. That's $200. So they ended up making more money. That's why they're not worried about this. That's why they're coming out ahead. And that's, if they were cheated money, they would have told them, hey, we were cheated money. So we really did not do anything. We might have realized maybe later on we should have maybe submitted the contract decrease and all of this stuff, and that's true. I had somebody else running this project, and I thought that all of the formalities were taken care of, and that's really what happened.
Okay, any questions for Commissioner Davis?
Yes. What was the name of the company again with the $16,000 expenditure in question? What was the name of it again?
Beko.
Beko. And Beko is no longer in business, is that correct?
As far as I know, they are either no longer in business or they're doing business under another name, but definitely not responding to us or to them.
So you allowed them to use your equipment, and the cost of the equipment was $16,000.
The cost of the rentals. These are the deals that were...
Yes, and I'm trying to get some clarification so I can make sure that I'm conceptualizing what occurred and have it correct. And so after having deducted the $16,000, which was the cost of the operation of the machine, then they got the balance of what they were owed. Now, my question to you is a policy question. Is it perhaps the general practice of prime contractors to allow subs to use their equipment? Is this practice a
Absolutely.
common
We do this all the time.
No problem. I just want to
Yeah.
be clear. Now, in terms of doing it all the time, is there an additional procedure that goes along with doing such an activity?
I'll be honest with you. Sometimes it's just verbal deals, and sometimes you write it down on paper. But, daily things like this, okay, I need to use your backhoe today for a couple of days. Sometimes I write it down, sometimes I didn't. Now, what I learned here is we should have done everything much more tight, and we should have then come back to the board and say, okay, we're going to change that contract from this much to this much. At that time, they were still at the job. They would have come and corroborated all of this.
So the answer to that question is that when, in fact, you do this procedure, there is a policy that you notify contract administration of the change in the relationship, and you indicate what the additional expenditures are going to be. Is that pretty accurate?
Correct.
Okay, and we failed to do that here, right?
Correct.
Okay. Now, on the second issue, Biscayne, it was $120,000 difference there in the delta. Is that correct?
No. Their bid was $700,000 more than what we estimated it to be, and that we only had one bid, and that's them. They're not even in California. They're in Austin. They're based in Austin, Texas. I don't even know that they have a contractor license in California.
Okay, I understand that, and I agree with you that in terms of the prime contractor's concern, as he or she seeks to contract with subcontractors, they are not only simply looking at the history of a subcontractor in terms of their performance, but I do understand that you're also looking at a subcontractor in terms of how they bid on a project and the quote that they give you on a project. And in fact, if that quote is too much, then as a prime contractor, it doesn't make good sense for you to engage in a relationship with a subcontractor who is quoting perhaps beyond the goal financially that you have for the project. And that, secondly, if you do have such a proposal from a contractor, despite his outstanding performance, I do realize financially that it causes a hardship on you in terms of what you're presenting overall. So I agree with you on that. Now, the issue, though, in terms of the plumber company was one that quoted 1.2, correct?
No, he actually gave us a verbal last minute when he was putting his job together, bid together, $1 million.
$1 million.
$1 million.
Okay,
That's how it came.
Didn't I hear the figure of 1.233 or?
Okay, well, no. So $1 million.
Oh, I see.
Our estimate was 1.2.
I got you. That was yours.
After the bid, he finished compiling his numbers. He got all the prices, and his price was at that time 1.233.
Okay, good. So what I'm saying with regard to what you have described to me as I understand it, I do understand the process and the issues that you had as a prime contractor in your relationship here. But again, I think that the reason why we're here is that there was some administrative responsibility we had to execute that procedure, to use the plumber. It's not that, in fact, he could not have been used, is my understanding, but it was that we needed to have, once again, given some paperwork, some notification to contract administration about this change that we were going to make. And so that was not done. Is that pretty?
Well, okay, and this is where the gray area is. I thought this was done, and the fact that he was already listed maybe made me understand that this was not a big deal. And also everybody in the project, the inspectors, the engineers, the construction management, all knew from day one. If they had told me you are using an unauthorized contractor for this work, we would have stopped.
So my point
and we would have finished the work.
My point to you then is, in fact, you agree that our concern here was that, as it is for you as a prime contractor, we did not engage in a notification to contract administration. You agree with that fact?
But we were not told that we were breaking the
That's
law.
not my question to you. My question is, now looking at where we are, do you agree, as the prime contractor on the project, that we did not implement the procedure of notifying contract administration? Do you agree, as a prime contractor, that we did not do that?
After the fact right now, yes, I do.
You do agree with that,
Yes,
or you disagree with it?
I do. I do agree.
You do agree.
Right.
So what we have here is a case where, in both circumstances, we've had some administrative problems with regard to implementing the procedure of notification to contract administration. You're not the only person in the world that have on occasions had some administrative problems, and we realize that we're not dealing with computers, we're dealing with people. But I just want to be clear with where we are. Now, what I want to ask you is an operational question. Is there somebody in your organization who has sole responsibility to notify you about administrative processes and procedures in dealing with contract administration?
Well, we have somebody who handles all the certified payroll and all these things. And she was never notified either that there was anything that we needed to formalize.
Now, let me ask you this. There is a training program, there is some notification, there is some information given to every prime contractor who engages in business with the city. Upon doing the business on this contract some time ago, was there not, to your knowledge, any information as it relates to how to do business with the city and process and procedures that have to be followed? Now, when I ask the question, I know that perhaps it's somebody in your shop that may have done it, but do you have knowledge at all?
Yes, we do. And we have requested substitutions on this very project because a couple of our contractors backed out, and that happens all the time. And we did do the paperwork in those instances. We didn't do it in this one. My only explanation is the reason it fell out of the radar is he was already on-site, approved contractor doing work. We just gave him more work. And that's my only explanation. I'm not saying it's an excuse, but it's my explanation.
I believe that contract administration, as a part of its regular routine duties, makes sure that prime contractors are aware of the policies that they have to follow on substitutions. So that I believe that somebody in your shop was informed of that. And I'm not saying that people don't make errors sometimes. I'm not saying that there's not oversight. I'm just, for the matter of the record, saying that one of the services that contract administration provides is to make sure that you understand that when there are changes, that contract administration has to be notified. In summary, I think that there were some problems that we've had as a prime contractor on this case in notifying contract administration. And I see that we need to talk about what we think the outcome should be given those errors that have occurred. But having somebody on your staff that will be the pinpoint person helps a prime contractor. There are many things you have to do than to worry about all of the important details. And if you don't have that person, these kinds of things happen. You have such a person, and I think we're at a point where the board needs to discuss, given the oversight issues that have occurred in this case, and there were two, and as the zoo said, you did an outstanding job at performance. No one is questioning the quality of your work. And secondly, as I said, I understand fully, in terms of a prime contractor, there are many variables you look at before you decide on a subcontractor. And it's not just simply that the subcontractor can do good work, that their ability or inability to give you a reasonable quote is just as much a part of the decision-making process as is their potential performance. And I think you're absolutely right on that point. If, in fact, La Habra was not reasonable in its request to you with this quote. So I think that we're at a point where the board should discuss, given the administrative issues that occurred, and I don't know if your person really failed to do diligence or not, but I do know that as you stand before us, these are two areas that are before us right now.
Just one last thing. Both mistakes were done to the benefit of the small subcontractor. None of it was to benefit us. As I said, we would have been able to do the work and possibly even save the profit that La Habra did on the 1.2. And we did the plumbing on the Jaguar. We know how to do that. So both mistakes were done to their benefit. And I feel like, yes, there was an oversight possibly, but also we were not notified. And had I been notified early on, you're using a wrong guy, we would have stopped and done whatever we needed to do instead of being hit. At the end of the job is when we found out our 120,000. We were already demobilized from the job.
Well, again, I'll just conclude by saying I think that you have done an outstanding job at the performance that's been verified by the zoo. I think that your decision-making process in terms of deciding whether or not a subcontractor is appropriate for your overall project financially, I think you've done a great job on that. Personally, that's how I feel. And so the issue is not a criticism of you on any other area. For me, it's just simply a decision about, or a discussion about the oversight that occurred as a result of the person within the organization. Did they notify you or did they fail to notify you, and how we see a solution to this problem taking place at this point. So you've been outstanding on all of the other areas, and the only thing that brings you here is the notification to contract administration at this point as I see it.
Right, and I'm requesting that you reverse the assessment, but if you do have to assess anything on the BECO issue, you assess, it is up to 10%, and you assess 10% on the difference, not on the whole 160,000. So if you feel like we need to be reminded to do things better administratively, maybe a $1,600 fine for the difference.
You've not had a problem before like this on any other project recently? No. This is the first time?
Right.
And you know, you're human, you're not a computer. Things happen. I just wanted to zero in on the areas of concern that bring you here. And again, it's not your performance at all. It is not your ability to make a decision at all as it relates to budget and as it relates to selection of subcontractors in general. But specifically, it is the failure to communicate with contract administration. And we know that they, for those of us who are prime contractors, are the governing body with whom you have to deal, and also with whom you have to communicate. And whenever a prime contractor does not communicate with contract administration, they always come here. So that's basically what this is about.
Thank you, Commissioner Davis. I have a few questions that I'd like to go through. And I want to start first with Ms. McGlinchey because I think Commissioner Davis has made the point clear on the notification issue. I have some questions on the numbers. So, Ms. McGlinchey, let's take the smaller number first. My recollection is that Mr. Huala indicated that there was cost to BECO to use Metro Builders equipment, and it was basically the write-off amount, which is $16,300. One, is that news to you now, or was there some discussion about that issue during your inquiry of the prime contractor in deciding whether or not to assess the penalty?
It's not new news to us. The contractor did make us aware of that. However, because they had not requested a reduction in the approved amount, and given that reasoning for it to be approved, we could not simply credit them for that.
Okay, and what would be so we're down basically, if I hear it right, to the notification issue that Commissioner Davis just shined the light on.
With regards to Belco, yes.
Yes, for that. I've got other questions on the numbers on the next issue in a minute. But, okay, so what would be I know that this is I don't want to say it's a small amount of money, but in the grand scheme of what we do at BCA, it's not one of the larger notification items on dollar amounts. What's the purpose of the requirement that our contractors notify us when these changes occur, such as this one?
Part of it is that, as he's indicated, that Belco was a smaller company. In this case, it appears that they've even gone out of business. And the reasoning is to ensure that a larger contractor is not, say, forcing a smaller contractor or subcontractor to do work for a lesser amount than they had bid to them. It's really for the protection of the subcontractor.
Okay. Going to the larger item regarding the life support system, there were a lot of numbers thrown out. We've heard 1.9 million. We've heard 1.2 million. We've heard 1.5 million. We've heard 1 million. And we've heard $762,000. Sounds like a reverse auction. So let me see if I can get to some of those, the key of some of those numbers as I understood them. And we'll see if we agree on what those numbers are. Just off the top of my head, my recollection is the 1.9 million was what was the initial bid amount that came, I'm wrong already?
Yes, if I understand correctly.
Then let me move to another number. Let's get one right. The $1.2 million is what the prime thought they could do the LSS work for.
Correct.
Okay, that's information that you have. The $1.5 million is the cost of La Habra's plumbing bid plus the LSS bid.
That is the claim.
Okay, that's whose claim?
The prime.
Okay, got it. The $1 million would be the difference between the $1.5 million for the LSS work and the plumbing and the bid amount of the plumbing, which was $517,000.
Correct.
Okay. The $762,000, is that what La Habra has reported they were paid?
In November 2015, after all of the work was done on this contract, we sent letters to all of Metro's subcontractors asking them to report to us the total amount that they invoiced. We didn't say for what work, just what is the total amount you have invoiced on this contract. And so their response to us came to it because they had responded previously in 2013, plus an additional amount for work performed, and the final amount was $762,000.
Great. Before I get to the $1 million, let me tell you what I think I'm hearing regarding the $762,000 and why it concerns me. And I could be completely wrong, and you can disabuse me of anything that I'm wrong about. If that's what they were invoiced and presumably paid, they didn't indicate they weren't paid, then that would mean, does that mean or could that mean that for $762,000 the prime received the LSS work and the $517,000 bid plumbing work?
Potentially.
Okay. Now let's get to the $1.9 million. Because if they thought they could do, if a prime thinks they can do this LSS work for $1.2 million, and they end up getting the plumbing and the LSS work for $700,000, there's a big savings there, right?
Yes.
Okay. Was there any discussion about that potentially with the prime as we led up to today's hearing?
No, the prime has maintained that La Habra was listed for $1.5 million.
Okay. So did I just hear, I may have misunderstood Mr. Huala, and he can certainly speak for himself, but I thought I heard, did he say they were paid? He had the canceled checks for the complete amount they were paid?
That's what he has claimed. That our issue, though, is a register listing of checks made payable to La Habra. We honestly don't know that those checks were for this project. He said so
Oh, they
himself.
could be paid for anything.
He said so himself. They've used them on other projects. It may have been something that was not city-related. What we know is that La Habra reported to us $762,000 before there was ever an issue of a penalty recommendation.
Was there a revision of that number after there was a recommendation of penalty?
Yes, just this last month, they reported a different amount, a much larger amount.
La Habra did, and what was that? The 1.5 or the 1.9?
I'm sorry, I actually do not have that letter with me. But it was a much larger amount, which for us simply proves that a company that was not approved to do that work performed that work, if you take that at face value.
All right. So now the number that I started off with that I got wrong. What was the 1.9 million again? That was it. Wasn't that the original?
That was the Biscayne.
The Biscayne bid. That was a Biscayne
really
bid amount.
Yeah.
And Biscayne complained because they learned about La Habra.
Well, yes.
Okay.
They complained that they weren't given the work when they were the only sub-bid for that work prior to the bid due date.
Now, going back to the work of business, of the Bureau of Contract Administration, the importance of being notified when work is going to be done by somebody completely different than has been approved in the bid process is, and we hear these answers, we know these answers generally, but I like the record on each item to reflect them. Go ahead.
Again, it's one, protection of the subs. Two, also to ensure that the public contract code is adhered to. In this particular case, you had the prime stating that they would perform that work themselves. Public contract code states that if a subcontractor is performing more than 0.5% of the total bid amount, which in this case was around $53,000, they must be bid listed for that work.
Okay. Any further questions from Ms. McGlinchey before we move back to the representative from Metro? Thank you, Ms. McGlinchey. Mr. Huala.
Can I correct a couple of her answers?
One moment, sir.
All right.
Are you contending that La Habra, what's the cost of the LSS work that you're contending that La Habra did? Because it sounds to me like it's the $517,000 plus the additional $1 million. So it would be $1 million there basically. Am I right about that?
Can I clarify that? On your handout that I gave you, it lists all the contracts that were issued to La Habra on this project. There are 3 of them. First one is $45,000 for the fire sprinklers, ended up being $76,000 after change orders. The other one is...
So that makes up your $1.9 million.
Correct.
Paid to La Habra.
No, this is contracts, and you have the copy of the contracts.
I hear you.
Yes. Okay, and then we also have the check register. Now you're saying that, oh, he could have been doing any work for us. First, he was not. Second, in our software program, it gives you the job number in front of every check, and our job number was 416. You can check on all of the check register, it is 416. We would welcome to give you the canceled checks. We would welcome to go check with La Habra. Now let me answer one more thing about the $700,000 that La Habra said they invoiced us. I have no control over what La Habra tells they were paid. I have control over what I've paid them and how I can prove to you that I paid them. I have the canceled checks, I have the check register, and the only explanation I have for La Habra not reporting that whole amount is we do not require our contractors to invoice us. See, because we pay them based on progress pay.
It seems to me, okay, thank you, sir. Let me ask Ms. McGlinchey another question. And for you too, Mr. Hollis. So, Ms. McGlinchey, is this problem not satisfied by the whole issue potentially resolved on the, never mind the 16,000, Becca, we're just on the La Habra issue. If Mr. Huela provides payment, proof of payment to La Habra, let's say for the 1.9 million for fire sprinklers, the final contract with change orders, 76,000. It's 31,000 larger than the original contract. Building plumbing, $53,000. It's 253. It's 53 above with change orders, and the LSS is about $87,000. So the final contract, total bid paid, or total amount paid to La Habra on the LA Zoo Rainforest of the Americas project, if he provides the backup for those payments of $1.9 million, does that not satisfy the concerns of the Bureau of Contract Administration? Or do we have new concerns that La Habra's paid even more money than what was originally set forth?
Correct. If anything, all that is doing is showing that they were paid far more, and that would increase the penalty amount because they were only approved for $517,000 worth of work.
Yeah.
Would you agree that the problem here, notwithstanding whatever the finances are, I have no problem with the contractor's decision in terms of subcontracting, and prime contractors have the authority to make a decision in terms of what prime contractor they think is appropriate. And many variables are included in that, including the fact, again, as I've stated, if in fact a subcontractor does excellent work, but yet makes a quote that is unreasonable to the overall finances of the project, a prime contractor has every single right to make the decision that he thinks is most appropriate in that. But rather, I think that the issue here is his failure to notify contract administration of the changes of work. Is that pretty accurate?
Not quite.
On this issue with regard to La Habra?
Correct,
Okay.
because you're correct in terms of his evaluation and rejection of the Biscayne quote because it was too high.
Right.
However, his bid proposal, by not listing anyone to do the life support system, he is in fact stating that he is doing it himself, and therefore he cannot sub it out per the public contract code.
Yes, but then he still, my point is, should have notified you of that fact.
And had he notified the Bureau of Contract Administration that he wanted to do that substitution, it would have been denied.
Oh, it would have been.
Yes, because the public contract
It's a
code would not
violation
have
of public
allowed
contract
him to
code.
do that.
4107.
So then, okay, gotcha. So then we need to have some discussion about.
Mr. Jordan, you look like you might want to say something. Our city attorney.
Thank you. I was getting anxious. I agree with the staff's recommendation. The point isn't how much did they pay La Habra. It's did La Habra do work for which they were listed. Under the public contract code and the administrative code, when you are required to list a subcontractor to do work 0.5% or 10,000, whichever is greater. Ms. McGlinchey said that comes out to 53,000 in this project. So the public contract code and administrative code said when you do not list a subcontractor that you are otherwise required to list because of the dollar amount, then you are asserting that you're qualified to do the work and you shall do the work. The issue here is they were not listed to do this work. When presented at the time of bid for an explanation as to why they did not pick Biscayne, they asserted affirmatively that they would self-perform, and they gave us their self-perform quote. So implicitly, because by operation of law, they're required to perform work that they don't listed, and then they took it one step further and stated that they would self-perform by showing us what their self-perform quote was. The issue isn't how much did they pay La Habra Fire, it's did La Habra Fire do work that they were not listed to do, that the prime was required to perform.
The answer to that question is they did.
Correct.
What's the answer to that question that the city attorney raised?
that in fact someone who was not approved to do the work did the work.
And Ms. McGlinchey, this 1.9 million that was paid to, that was according to Metro, that was paid to La Habra for these items, is this new news to you? When did you learn of this amount, this issue?
Actually, I had not seen that accounting.
So that would be new news to you.
Yes.
And if that were the case, then you told me a moment ago that the penalty might actually be higher?
Yes, since they were only approved for the 517,000, you'd subtract that, which would be around 1.4 million.
So that would make it
140.
140,000.
Yes.
Yeah. So, in essence, if we were to, so the 120,000, and has there been any follow-up? You indicated that La Habra came back after the notice of penalty with additional, what was it? Was it the additional information, the additional invoices?
Actually, I believe it, I'm sorry, I just glanced at it when I was on vacation. And so I believe it was a one-page letter just stating that they had performed this work for a total of this amount.
And you don't recall what that amount was?
Not recall what that was.
Okay. Let's deal with the issue of the $16,000 first. Yeah. Commissioner Rodriguez has made a statement about it, 10% of the difference, which would be $1,600. I would second that motion on the $16,300. It would be to reduce that to 10% of the difference, which will be $1,630. That's correct, Commissioner Rodriguez. I'll second that. Regarding we're going to vote for it as a package because we've got one item in front of us. Regarding the $120,000, colleagues, let me tell you what concerns me. There are a couple of things that concern me, and we can go from there, obviously. But I recognize the good work. I've been to the exhibit more than once. I'm always amazed by it. I appreciate the comments from the zoo department. Regarding the quality of the work. But as Commissioner Davis made clear, that's not our concern today. We're very happy with the quality of the work, but we still have to have the books kept in the proper way as the process unfolds. And there are two things that concern me here. One concern is, and I had a question here that the representative from Metro has already essentially answered. And I'll tell you what the question was. But my initial question was, of the $1.2 million that Metro thought that it would cost them to do the LSS, the life saving support work, the life support system work, versus the $1 million, which was my initial understanding was what the cost of the LSS work between the $517,000 plumbing work plus the $1.5 that was in the board report. Where did that $200,000 savings go? But the question is essentially answered by the statement that, no, we actually paid them $1.9 million. So that moves us into this whole additional area that this discussion that I had with Ms. McGlinchey a moment ago of this work being done in a larger amount that was not submitted to the Bureau of Contract Administration, not approved by the Bureau of Contract Administration. We have consensus across the board from two representatives of the Bureau of Contract Administration and the City Attorney's Office that we have a violation of the Public Contracting Code. And so the question for me is not whether there should be a penalty, but how much there should be a penalty. I am inclined to agree with the Bureau's recommendation on while we reduce the 16,000 to 1,600, I'm not moved, or at least I'm not convinced by anything that I've heard thus far, to reduce the $120,000 because we either have savings by the prime contractor by moving away from the bid listed amount, moving away from what they thought it was going to cost them, and enlisting someone that was convenient, that could do the work without notifying the Bureau of Contract Administration, or the difference between the additional amount that could be spent that Bureau of Contract Administration has not been able to confirm that would take us to an even higher potential penalty. So when I hear those two things, I'm inclined to go with the work and the research and the attempted audit, in essence, by the Bureau of Contract Administration and stay with the $120,000. But I'm also open to any other suggestions. Anything else?
Yeah, I don't know what the fee should be, but I do agree that I think the violation of Contract Code 2000 was what we were talking about as well. Is that right, Mrs. McGlinchey? Is that
4107.
What's code what now?
4107.
Okay, so code 1407, I think he said. 4107. So that coupled with your analysis, Mr. President, I think kind of compels us to have some kind of fee that's due as a result of that. I don't know if it's 120 that the board feels is appropriate, but certainly I generally agree that we have to do something there. I don't know what the boards of commissions.
Mr. Huala, you have something you want to add? It doesn't surprise me, but go ahead.
Well, I just wanted to clarify, there is no $200,000 savings.
There's no what?
There are no $200,000 savings. We ended up...
Well, no, I know that. I knew that would be your answer. That's what the $1.9 million is. That doesn't surprise me.
And the contract as written, it shows that $1,505,000 for the site's utilities and the life support system.
All right. I understand that.
And one more thing, if you do want to give us a fine, I think the code says up to 10%. And given all the circumstances on this project, given the fact that we only had one bid before the job, given the fact that we performed the job to everyone's satisfaction, I would love to request that you just assess the minimum. It is not 10% automatically, it's up to 10%. And you can just go 1%. It's up to your discretion. I just ask for that consideration.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. President, is that our practice? Is up to 10%? That's a city?
Yes. It is a discretion of the board. It has the discretion of the board has been increased in recent years. We took essentially 10% with the 16,000 and reduced it to 1%. Ms. McGlinchey, could I see you for one more moment? Was there, two questions. First, was there an attempt to discover in the process where the different, whether there was essentially savings that were obtained by the prime during this process, number one, by the Bureau's review of the books, if that's even possible, or even in questions back and forth between the Bureau and the prime through email correspondence, letter correspondence, or verbal correspondence, number one. Number two, the basis for the $120,000, was there any determination as to whether or not to recommend a lower amount, or are you automatically, you hit the maximum amount just as a matter of course and let us deal with the rest of it? So those are the two questions.
With regards to the dollar amounts, no, we did not look into the exact amounts and to try and determine whether or not there was a savings. We simply looked at who actually performed that life support work, which we verified was in fact La Habra, even though they were not listed to do so nor approved. And in terms of the 120,000, we took the maximum, which is 10% of the amount. In this case, Metro's $1.2 million costs that they said that they were going to perform the work themselves. And so we took that, the 10% of that, and we leave it at the board's discretion.
Okay, Commissioner Jacinto.
Thank you, President James. You know, given the facts and hearing the discussion, President James, you have stated that maybe the consideration of the staff's recommendation, 120,000, 10%, up to, I would urge us to consider something reduced, as we did give consideration to the initial first part.
Well, and I indicated that I'm open to any other suggestions. So I'm sorry? Commissioner Rodriguez has suggested 5%. I do, that makes it $60,000. I do want to put on the record, though, that, and Mr. City Attorney, Mr. Jordan, recognizing that I want to stay within the bounds of our discretion. There's been a recommendation of 5%. I would second that motion. Mine was not a motion, mine was a suggestion. I would second that motion in addition to the 1,600 for this reason. Well, two reasons. One, the quality of the work and working through the process, which I know is a difficult process along the way. So I'm assuming, Mr. City Attorney, that that's something that we could base a reduction on if we wanted to.
Yes.
Okay. Secondly, I do think that there should be a penalty here because of the two potential scenarios that I put on the table earlier that the Bureau of Contract Administration was not able to clear up despite their efforts. So with that, I would second what I believe is a motion for a revised penalty on agenda item number 1 for 61,000. No, it's 1,630 plus the $61,630.
That is correct. You do have two motions on the table right now, so if there is a third motion, that last motion would supersede the prior two motions, if that's what the board is considering at this point. So you're aggregating it. It's bifurcated, now you're aggregating it.
I don't know that either of us intended to make motions before. We were having a discussion. So either way, we've got a motion on the floor now.
A third motion.
For $61,630 instead of the 136. So the revised amount would be $61,630 as a revised penalty on agenda item number 1, not revising any of the other recommendations. So is there a second on that?
Well, yeah, I want to say that I want to think that we need to underscore to prime contractors how very, very important it is to have someone in your organization that can help you to identify the needs for communication when there is a change in the contract agreement in terms of the roles and responsibilities that have been indicated to contract administration, that when those roles and responsibilities change, some kind of communication is critical. And I think that because we've had this an unfortunate violation, that we have to do something. We would love to not have to do anything because we do know of the great work that our prime contractors, at least many of them, do deliver to the city, and we appreciate that. But the work of the board is the work of the board, and I just will second that motion with that message to our prime contractors moving forward.
Thank you. Any objection to the seconded motion? Without objection, that will be the order. Any problem sending it forthwith? We'll send number 1 forthwith. Thank you, everyone, for your participation. Agenda item number 2. Council District 5, recommendation from Commissioner Jacinto and the Bureau of Engineering recommending that the board deny the appeal of the Bureau of Engineering determination to locate an above-ground facility adjacent to 6400 West Drexel Avenue. There's a request to continue this, or Mr. Ledoux, are we going forward today?
Good morning. My name is Jeff Ledoux. I work with the Bureau of Engineering, AGF U-Permit section. It is not the Bureau's recommendation that this be continued, but that this matter be decided today. The reason for that is this was appealed by the owner of the property, Sean Callie Reagan. This is a architectural style that I guess could possibly qualify for historical designation. At the start of this application, it had never been applied for. And the appellant has since applied for historic recognition on this thing. And
so it wasn't prior to the application?
No, it was not.
Okay.
And in the appeal process, basically what you had was there was a large utility pole on the corner. So, you know, the house faces this way, and here's a utility pole right here. And it had a pretty large antenna array on it. Verizon agreed to take that antenna array, which was exempt from the permitting process, by the way, and move it over 200 feet further so that it's actually on the next intersection over, so it's nowhere near this property. This application also consisted of a climate control vault, which is exempt from the permitting process, with two round vent stacks, which are moved all the way to the rear of the property near the garage. And remember, this is in the public right-of-way. There's also a meter cabinet, which is what the AGF approval process is actually after here. And it is located about halfway down the side of the property. There is an, 8 to 10 foot hedge where this thing is. So, and there's trees along there that are shaded. So anyone standing directly in the front, actually because of the position of where the vent stacks and the meter cabinet, won't see this at all. They have to come over to the side. So Verizon made a major change to their design by taking that antenna array and moving it adjacent to a totally different property when they did not technically have to. And they did also move the meter, or I should say the vent stacks and the vault, further towards the rear. Also, a couple of things to note here. One is this is under an FCC 50-day shot clock. If I take out the time from the time the appeal was filed with my office to the date of the, we actually had two meetings, Commissioner Cinto, on this. One was on October 13th and one was November 3rd. If I take that time frame out as a tolling agreement, which means we're not on the clock, we're at 175 days on this. The other thing is that if the board were to deny the appeal and we were to issue the permit, and there are other governmental requirements that must be, approval must be gained for, our permit does not give them the permission to construct in any way, shape, or form. They still have to get permission from these other governmental agencies that they have to get an approval from.
Okay.
And that's why we're not recommending that this be continued, because there are no new issues to be brought before the board. We know that this property has been filed for a historic designation. Whether it gets it or not, we don't know. But Verizon and their consultant, Cable Engineering Service, has stated that they do have to go through some historic review from other governmental agencies before they would be allowed to construct this site.
And wasn't there movement, you may have already covered this, Mr. Ledoux, or just so we're clear, because I think we may have lost it. There was movement of this structure from the original site proposed.
That's correct.
Yeah. Okay, to, I think you said the other side of the, or the end of the block, what was it?
The antenna array has been moved further south so that it's adjacent to the intersection of the house behind the appellant. So it's 200 some feet away from where it was originally designated to be put.
And are we up to date on our notifications to everyone that potentially affected?
Yes, we have. The only one that appealed this was the applicant who this meter cabinet is adjacent. There were 4 lots notified. We didn't hear anything from the other 3 homeowners.
Okay. Commissioner Jacinto.
Thank you, President James. Colleagues, this is, we are at 175 days after, and the shot clock's 150 days. Technically, Verizon could open litigation against the city for our lack of action. I would want to check in with our city attorney, Mr. Jordan, and verify that, sir.
Well, we're in open session, but I do confirm Jeff's analysis of the shot clock. The federal law and state law now both provide, in different respects, shot clocks that we are legally obligated to comply with.
Okay, so based on that, I would, and based on the staff testimony that our approval of the permit would not provide for a construction go ahead, and that there would still be the federal or historic issues that must be resolved before. So in that, I would request that we to hear the motion and make a decision today.
Yeah, I'm inclined to hear. I think we've just heard it. I'm inclined to hear it today. Any problem with that? Okay, so thank you, Mr. Ledoux, for setting us up. Mr. Searcy, you have a card in on this?
Good morning, Chair and Commissioners. My name is Rob Searcy. I'm with Prescott Communications representing Verizon Wireless. I think Jeff has really encapsulated what happened and transpired on this project. We've met with the appellant on 2 different occasions.
Is the appellant here at all? We have the appellant's positions in the record. I just didn't know if anybody was here representing the appellant. Go ahead, sir.
Subsequent to a meeting with her, we actually met with staff in the field to look at options. I will say, for one thing, this property and actually the house was actually designed by Robert Nutra, who is a renowned architect. This project, and actually the house itself, is a 1,500 square foot home. It is not on the National Registry. It's not on the local registry. It is, to my knowledge, not on the survey. I have the city's ZEMIS report that shows that it is not there, and it's not considered to be a valuable asset or resource at this time. The appellant did say that they had an intent to file for that, but as of this morning, it, to my knowledge, has not been approved and has not been entered on that list. So that would remove it from a protection of us having to go through a Section 106 NEPA review through the State Office of Historic Preservation. However, we took into account that this was a valued property by the owner. We looked at an option to address some of her concerns from an aesthetic impact. Therefore, we moved the antenna array 2 utility poles to the south and relocated our equipment as far away as possible. I also have some pictures to show you really the hedge out there as it relates to a buffer between the right-of-way and actual visual access into the property. And as you can see, there's a lower portion of the hedge that is about 7 feet tall. There's an adjacent portion of the hedge, which is now the location where we have shifted our vault to. It's in excess of 15 feet in height. So from the right-of-way to the property itself, there's no visual access. So I don't think that, even if this was a historic resource, that it would be impaired by the placement of our equipment at that location. So with that, I would just ask the Commission to accept the recommendation of staff and approve the application as presented. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Anything further? I have no problem supporting Commissioner Jacinto's recommendation on this. So that's my motion, seconded by Commissioner Rodriguez. Any objection? With that objection, that'll be the order. Problem sending it forthwith? We'll send it forthwith. Thank you all. Agenda item number 3, Bureau of Engineering and the Bureau of Sanitation for Council Districts 9 and 14, recommending that the board authorize $1,500,000 in additional contingency and approve a revised construction budget of $12,869,169 for the North Outfall Sewer Rehabilitation Unit Number 3 from Vermont to Trinity project. And number 2, authorize the city engineer to issue multiple change orders to Spinello companies for an amount not to exceed $1,500,000 for this project to rehabilitate approximately 750 feet of the north outfall sewer between the Enterprise Street siphon and Santa Fe Avenue. Gavork McCurcheon. Did I get the last name right?
Yeah, it's pretty good.
Awesome. It's about time,
McCurcheon.
right?
Sorry.
Go ahead, sir.
Good morning, Gavork McCurcheon from Bureau of Engineering, Wastewater Conveyance Construction Division. Quick summary. Most of the North Outfall sewer, it's about 28 miles long, is more than 90 years old. There are several projects denoted as NOS Unit 1, 2, 3, etc., which are in various stages of design and construction for rehabilitating the deteriorated sewer line. Currently, NOS Unit 2 and 5 is just completing construction, and NOS Unit 3 is just starting construction. It's been awarded and NTP issued. We're just about to start physical work. While surveying the NOS for other projects, in this case NOS Unit 7, which consists of 16-inch diameter tile-lined concrete pipe, it was discovered that a portion of that unit has unusually severe deterioration. A hole from the surface of the sidewalk, through the hole you can see the actual sewer with a void, and that's an immediate dangerous situation. So an emergency sewer contractor was mobilized to repair that one section, which is about 16 feet long. The location of this sewer, as you said, between Santa Fe and Enterprise, is only about 200 feet away from the Los Angeles River and directly adjacent to Amtrak facilities, rail lines. Through the emergency project, after it was completed, the post video, through the emergency project, we determined that about 750-foot section of this reach, it needs more immediate repair. The NOS Unit 7 project is slated to be awarded, I believe, at the end of this year. So about a year from now is when construction may start. So Bureau of Sanitation and Engineering decided to move forward to add this 750-foot section to an ongoing current project similar to this NOS Unit 3, which is almost exactly the same, slightly different pipe size on a change order basis. So the engineer's estimate for the job was $1.5 million, and the NOS Unit 3 project is awarded for $10.8 million in construction for the construction costs and about $541,000 for contingency. Thus, we need to request an additional $1.5 million for this project, for the additional scope. On March 18th, we briefed Commissioner Jacinto on the issue and received emergency authorization. After that, we started negotiating and speaking with the contractor to get the ball moving, basically, so we don't have to wait through this whole process and then start. Any questions?
I don't have any questions. Thank you, Gavork, for the explanation, for the briefing. Commissioner Santos made a motion that we adopt agenda item number 3, seconded by Commissioner Rodriguez. Any objection? Without objection, we'll adopt number 3. Any problem sending it forthwith? We'll send number 3 forthwith. Thank you, sir. Agenda item number 4. Bureau of Sanitation recommending that the board authorize the Bureau or the Director of the Bureau or his designee to issue a notice of award to Parsons Brinkerhoff Incorporated to provide sustainable water resources planning in support of task order for solicitation number 51. The total budget is $400,000. The duration of the TOS agreement will be 2 years from the date of issuance of the notice to proceed. Lanice Monaro? Good morning.
Good morning. My name is Lanice Marrero. I'm with Sanitation. And we are here to request authority to issue the notice of award. This TOS is mainly to provide planning support to the Bureau of Sanitation. The consultant firm will be working in sanitation offices about 3 days per week. and they will be, among many tasks, developing funding strategies and support in securing grants and funding to for projects related to water resources, and this is related to recycled water and stormwater capture and water conservation. The support services will be on a regular but temporary basis. And some of the other tasks the consulting firm will be providing, apart from assisting us in identifying grants, they will be writing, helping us in write those grant applications. They will also be providing third-party review of One Water LA related documents. They will additionally be training staff and working closely with NGOs as related to policy development and project implementation for water resource-related projects, as I said before, related to maximizing recycled water and stormwater capture and water conservation within the city. And this is all in support of the Mayor's Executive Directive 5 and the Sustainability Plan, and trying to integrate efforts within city departments. And if you have any questions.
Commissioner Rodriguez.
How does this differ in terms of the services that they're going to provide in comparison to those that were put on contract under the One Water LA?
So the consulting contract for One Water LA was specifically for Phase 2. It went to Carollo Engineers, and it was for the development of the One Water LA 2040 plan. However, One Water LA is more than a plan. It's basically become this citywide program that entails more than the development of the plan. These elements that I described that are in the scope for this consultant are outside of Carollo's scope. Carollo is basically developing the specific tasks that are going to be in the One Water LA 2040 plan, and this consultant will be in-house supporting staff, providing third-party review of those documents, and additionally supporting staff in other efforts related to integration of city and agency programs. And also helping us write grants and apply for projects, and helping us further those quick fixes that can be done before One Water, the plan is actually developed.
And so I read that you had received three agencies that participated in the pre-bid meeting, but only Parsons was the only respondent. Did you get any responses as to why they were the only response? Or, our pre-qualified list is significant, and so we have a lot of opportunities to reach out to a wide variety of contractors. So I'm just wondering,
So,
it seemed like...
We did not get any written responses as to why. I can only presume there were three firms that showed up to the pre-proposal meeting back in February. At that pre-proposal meeting, we restated the scope of work and the requirements, and the requirements was really to have an experienced firm that was willing to work in our offices about 3 days per week. And finding a person that is experienced, that is willing to work in our offices 3 days per week, we presume it's hard for a lot of consulting firms, given that the economy has picked up and they have a lot of projects going on. So I can only presume that is the reason.
So do we know that, or are we speculating that?
I'm speculating.
Okay.
We did not get any written reasons as to why.
Okay. Any follow-up with the two firms that dropped off?
We did. One of them, we left a message. They didn't return the call. The other one was really after the pre-proposal meeting. They were not interested in the work. They did not offer any further explanation.
Okay. Anything further? Commissioner Repenning? I'm sorry, I didn't see your light.
No problem. I just wanted to say that I support the Bureau adding additional resources for grant applications. There is money now, at the state and other places on water, on recycled water. And so I think it's really important. I know that we have not added resources to account for the work that you guys are really being pressed to do by our board, by the mayor's office, to get as much as we can out of Prop 1 and the other sources. So I'm hoping that a good chunk of this funding will go to support those efforts.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you, Commissioner Repenning. Is that a motion? All right. I'll second it. Any objection? Without objection, we'll adopt agenda item number 4. Any problem sending it forthwith? We'll send number 4 forthwith. Thank you, Ms. Monaro. Mr. Executive Officer, we cleared the desk.
Yes, you have.
Then we are adjourned. Thank you, everybody.